The girl hadn't spoken a word since he took her. Joran Vale watched her from the corner of his eye as she sat cross-legged on the floor of the cargo hold, her hands resting lightly on her knees, as still as the void outside his ship's hull. Blue-skinned, with fine ridges along her temples and scalp like the roots of a tree, she was beautiful in a way that unsettled him. Regal, maybe, or simply too composed for someone who'd just been handed off as property. He hadn't wanted her. He wanted the credits he was owed. But Gork, a low-life pirate who'd spent the better part of a month eluding Joran's hunt, had been desperate. "She's worth more than coin," the brute had said, slapping a biometric leash into Joran's palm with an oily grin. "Rare species. Obedient, too. Doesn't even talk." Joran had almost put a blaster bolt between the pirate's eyes. But the job had been about settling a debt, and the bounty offices didn't care if payment came in platinum bars or packaged lifeforms. He'd taken her, more out of pragmatism than malice, collaring her with the inhibitor and dragging her onto the Stardagger without a word. She hadn't resisted. She hadn't cried. She just looked at him, looked through him, with those luminous silver eyes. 3 days had passed since. He tapped commands into the terminal in front of him, trying not to glance back at her again. Her presence gnawed at the edges of his composure. She wasn't behaving like any enslaved creature he'd ever seen. No panic, no pleading, no dull-eyed acceptance. If anything, she observed him with clinical interest, as though she were cataloging his habits. "What's your name?" he asked, finally breaking the silence. No answer. "You understand me?" Still nothing. Just that steady, unreadable gaze. Joran grunted and turned back to his console. "Fine. Be that way." Later, while running diagnostics on the NAV systems, he noticed something strange. A secure subroutine had been rewritten. Nothing critical, but the kind of tampering only someone with high-level access, or technical genius, could have pulled off. He locked the console and checked the security logs. No entries. But the timing aligned with the hours he'd been asleep. He looked back at her. "You did something to my ship." She blinked. Slowly. A single ridge above her eye lifted. That night, he bolted the door to his quarters. By the 6th day, the anomalies increased. Shield calibrations adjusted themselves to perfect harmonic frequencies. Fuel flow efficiency jumped inexplicably by 12%. Entire maintenance protocols executed without his input. At first, he suspected a hidden virus. Then he remembered the girl. He found her in the engine room, standing still in the middle of the access bay, surrounded by open panels and exposed conduit. "I didn't give you permission to come in here," he snapped. She turned her head slowly. "You didn't ask what I was capable of." Her voice was low, clear, and melodic, completely at odds with the silence she'd held for days. Joran stepped back, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. "You've been faking this mute act?" "I've been observing." She straightened, stepping away from the panel. "And correcting errors. Your ship is held together by more luck than skill." Joran narrowed his eyes. "You've got some nerve." "I have necessity," she replied, brushing imaginary dust from her hands. "I require this ship to function." "So do you. How the hell do you know my systems?" She gave him a faint smile, enigmatic, infuriating. "Because I designed some of them." He stared, searching her face for deceit. "That's impossible. You're not the first to assume that." Joran felt the conversation spinning out of control. He needed to reassert control. "Look. I don't know who you are, but you're wearing a collar. That means you do what I say. Is that what you think?" she asked. Then she reached up and unclasped the inhibitor with a quiet snap. It dropped into her hand like an empty ring. Joran froze. She held the collar out to him. "You never activated it properly. The failsafe was still engaged." His blood ran cold. She could have killed him. Could have stolen the ship. But she hadn't. "Who are you?" he asked, voice barely more than a whisper. "Silari," she said. "Daughter of the House of Valtari, keeper of the unseen starways, and rightful heir to the ascendancy of Thraxis. Joran's breath caught. That name, Thraxis, he knew it from half-whispered myths and black market star charts. A lost empire, or maybe just a rumor, deep in the outer reaches. Either way, no one claimed ties to it without earning a blaster bolt. You're lying. She took a step toward him, calm and sure. Would you like proof? Joran held his ground, jaw clenched. Start talking. Silari walked past him, brushed her fingers across the command interface, and suddenly the room dimmed. The main console glowed with symbols, ancient, flowing scripts he didn't recognize. The ship's AI protested briefly, then quieted. You locked out my system. No, she corrected. I made it listen to me. He felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath him. The girl he'd taken as payment wasn't a slave. She wasn't a girl either. She was something else, something powerful, and he'd been treating her like freight. She turned to him one last time. You didn't rescue me, Captain Vale. You collected your own reckoning. And then she left the room, leaving Joran staring at the collar in his hand, cold metal, meaningless now. For the first time in years he felt fear. And for the first time in his life, it wasn't because of what someone else might do. It was because of what he already had. Joran sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the star map projected above his console. The usual grid of routes, pirate zones, and supply chains had been replaced by something older. Symbols, not coordinates. Paths that shouldn't exist. Lines between stars that defied known physics. Every instinct told him to shut it down. Every memory told him he was already in too deep. Behind him, Silari moved like gravity answered to her. She didn't walk, she glided, silent but utterly present. She had shed the utilitarian garb Gorik's crew forced on her. Now she wore a sleek tunic of black and copper fabric drawn from the ship's archives. How she'd known it existed, he still didn't know. Her posture was different now. Her silence, once mistaken for submission, now rang of sovereignty. Your royalty, he said, his voice hoarse with disbelief. But you were in chains. They weren't chains, she corrected. They were concealment. I wore them willingly to avoid detection while my enemies hunted me. He turned to face her, disbelief churning inside him. You let yourself be captured? I let myself disappear, she said calmly. And your pirate, Gorik, was never supposed to find me. He stumbled on my trail and assumed I was a rare commodity. It amused me to see how far the spiral of ignorance would go. You knew, he said slowly, eyes narrowing. You knew I'd take you. I calculated the odds, she admitted, meeting his gaze without flinching. I needed a ship. I needed someone not bound to any galactic faction. You fit. He stood abruptly, fists clenched. You used me. I needed a vector, she said without shame. And you're better than you think, Captain Vale. You didn't try to sell me. You didn't hurt me. You even fed me. Don't make that sound noble. It wasn't, she agreed. But it mattered. He felt like a fool. All this time, he thought he held power in the situation, grudging power, perhaps, but power nonetheless. Instead, he'd been a pawn on someone else's board. And the board was far bigger than he'd ever imagined. So what now? He asked, voice low. You planning to kill me? Wipe my ship's memory and vanish? Silari studied him for a long moment. You're the first person in years to treat me as something between worthless and sacred. That makes you useful, and dangerous. I don't intend to kill either of those things. He exhaled, tension not leaving his shoulders. That's not exactly comforting. You'll adapt, she said, and turned her attention back to the star map. She extended a finger and traced a path through the dense markings. This route leads to Thraxis Prime. The heart of your empire? What's left of it? He approached slowly, trying to process. I thought Thraxis was a myth. A dead legend. A civilization that vanished centuries ago. We didn't vanish, she said. We withdrew. We watched the chaos unfold, your republics and sectors squabbling over scraps while we waited for the right moment. And now? Now the stars are aligning again. My claim to the throne is unchallenged. My family is gone, assassinated or missing. I'm all that remains. The nobles who tried to erase me will expect someone broken. Instead, I'll give them you. His brow furrowed. Me? You're my rescuer, she said. And by law, also my protector. Thrax's tradition recognizes such bonds. They'll believe you are mine. I didn't sign up for this, he muttered. Neither did I, she countered. Yet here we are. The ship jolted, then the AI chirped. Incoming transmission. Royal encryption detected. Joran's pulse quickened. You called someone? I activated a beacon, she said. Thrax's protocols respond to blood and intent. My return was noticed. Outside, the stars rippled. A fleet shimmered into view, sleek black vessels with crimson sigils glowing at their cores. They hung in the void like watchful sentinels. Joran's fingers twitched near the weapon controls. Easy, Silari said. They're allies. For now. A voice crackled over the comms. This is Admiral Tyvan of the Crimson Veil. Confirm identity. Silari stepped forward. This is Silari Valtari, rightful heir to the Ascendancy. Stand down. There was a long pause. Then, your command is acknowledged. Awaiting orders, Princess. She turned to Joran. See? You're already part of the command chain. He gave her a sharp look. I'm not your subject. No, she agreed. You're something rarer, unclaimed by any house or creed. Which makes you powerful. The fleet surrounded them like a halo, escorting the Stardagger toward the nearest jump gate. Joran sat back, letting the navigation override steer. His life had veered off course with a single choice, accepting a silent, silver-eyed girl as payment. And now, he was being ushered into the political core of a forgotten empire, as the chosen guardian of its resurrected queen. I don't play well with dynasties, he said finally. Good, Silari replied. Neither do I. The gate flared to life, bathing the stars in light. As the ship surged forward, Joran felt the weight of the future settle on his shoulders. He didn't know where this was headed, only that it was far beyond anything he'd ever chased, and that turning back was no longer an option. The grand halls of the Thraxis Prime Citadel rose around Joran like a vision out of an ancient dream, all silver spires and flowing light, built with technology so advanced it appeared more like magic than science. He tried not to gape as he followed Silari through arched corridors that shimmered underfoot, but every instinct screamed at him that he didn't belong here. He was a man of rusted hulls, of battered plasma rifles and cargo bays reeking of old Greece, not of gleaming palaces and whispered reverence. Silari moved ahead, her stride long and sure, her presence drawing the eyes of every figure they passed. Courtiers in flowing robes, armored guards with crested helms, and hollow-eyed advisors bowed low as she approached. She wore no crown, no scepter, yet the authority she radiated made those things seem unnecessary. In this place, her word was law. Joran adjusted the belt at his hip, where he'd strapped his sidearm despite Silari's warning that weapons were strictly ceremonial here. He didn't care. He wasn't about to walk into a nest of political vipers unarmed. They entered a massive chamber where the ceiling stretched beyond sight, constellations of artificial stars rotating slowly above. At the center, a circular dais awaited, with thrones set around it like points of a compass. Already seated were the remnants of Thraxis's ruling houses, stern faces, gilded uniforms, hands heavy with rings that gleamed with layered meaning. A hush fell over the hall as Silari ascended the steps. Joran hung back, feeling the weight of every stare upon him. Present yourself, intoned a tall figure in blood-red robes. His voice carried the sharpness of command honed over decades. Silari stood proudly. I am Silari Valtari, last scion of the blooded line, bearer of the unseen starways, and rightful heir to the Ascendancy. I claim the throne by right of survival, oath, and starbound heritage. The assembly shifted, an audible ripple of discomfort passing through them. Joran sensed the undercurrent immediately, fear. Not of Silari's claim, they had expected that, but of what her return might awaken. "And your protector?" another elder said, sneering slightly as he inclined his head toward Joran. Joran kept his face neutral. He recognized the look. He'd seen it in 100 dive bars, from pirates sizing up prey. Contempt. "He is my bondguard," Silari said firmly. "By ancient right, one who claims the protection of the last of the house may not be challenged without facing her shield first." Murmurs rose among the nobles. Joran watched their glances flick to him, recalculating. A dozen assassination plots crumbled and reformed behind narrowed eyes. The red-robed elder spoke again. "Will the bond-guard state his fealty?" Every instinct screamed at Joran to walk away. He owed Silari nothing. She had used him, manipulated him into this madness. But somewhere beneath the layers of anger and betrayal, he recognized the truth: she had no one else. She had gambled everything on a half-broken star runner and a bounty hunter with blood on his hands. He stepped forward. "My name is Joran Vale," he said, voice steady. "I offer my blade, my ship, and my life to the Lady Silari Valtari, until the stars themselves fall from the sky." A formal oath. Ancient words he hadn't realized he knew until they tumbled from his mouth. Perhaps some part of him had always belonged to this kind of story. The hall accepted his words with grave silence. Then the elder nodded. "Let it be entered into the Codex Eternal," he intoned. Silari glanced at him, just once, a flicker of something passing between them. Gratitude? Respect? He couldn't name it, but it made the hollow ache in his chest a little less sharp. They left the chamber together, the echoes of the noble's judgment following them down the long corridors. When they were alone again, Silari let out a breath she had been holding for hours. "You didn't have to say that," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Didn't have much choice, did I?" A corner of her mouth lifted. "You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you." He thought about it. About the life he was leaving behind, the endless jumps between barren moons, the meaningless jobs, the slow rot of loneliness. "I'm tired of running empty cargo holds," he said finally. She stopped, turning to face him fully. "This won't be easy. They will challenge us. Test us. Betray us." "Sounds familiar," he said, almost smiling. She offered her hand, not as a queen to a servant, but as an equal offering partnership. Tentatively, he took it. "There is one more thing you should know," she said, voice low. He arched an eyebrow. "The House of Valtari," she said, her silver eyes gleaming, "owns half the mapped galaxy. And the other half owes us debts they have forgotten." Joran let out a breathless laugh. "No pressure, then. Only destiny," she said. They stood there, two figures on the cusp of reclaiming a forgotten empire, bound by choice and necessity, by accident and by something deeper neither could yet name. Outside the citadel walls, the stars stretched endless and waiting, and for the first time in a long while, Joran Vale felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be.